has been made, but this truly is the worst casting maybe in the history of the film industry. Has there been a film with worse casting than this? And I don't just mean the Snow White actress. Obviously, she's terrible, but
is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
The star, Rachel Zegler, is unbelievably charmless in public.
She was, as woke as they are.
She just sounds bitter and angry.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business. Thanks.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
I truly do believe that. There's something wrong with her. She's disturbed, she's unhappy, and she thinks it's about feminism and the patriarchy and about abortion, but the reality is she's just not stable, like the majority of people in Hollywood. They're just not stable human beings. I would highly advise that you boycott this film, no matter how much your children love
Rachel
Snow
Zegler,
White.
who is Hispanic, as Snow White. Now, again, you can cast people however you want to cast people. I really don't care. However, Snow White, in which the description of the character is skin as white as snow, lips red as the rose, right? I mean, there's an actual physical description of the part. Not my fault it's written that way. It ain't racist to write it that way. That's the description of the part. That's what it is. The name of the movie is Snow White, okay?
Behind the scenes mayhem. I expected a Frankenstein's monster were seen to be stitched together. I think a lot of these live action updates are really hard to watch. They've really done so much stepping on rakes over the last few months with this project where the box office is just not going to recover.
Oh, man.
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
Snow White, there's been an enormous amount of controversy surrounding Snow White, obviously.
Disney is in trouble. A massive, self-inflicted disaster has unfolded before our eyes, and at the center of it all, the live-action Snow White remake. A film that was meant to be a reimagining of a beloved classic instead became one of the most controversial Hollywood projects in years. But how did we get here? Was it Rachel Zegler's controversial statements, Disney's obsession with modernizing classics, or a combination of both? Today, we're breaking down how this movie became a PR nightmare, why the backlash was so intense, and whether there's any way out for Rachel Zegler and Disney after this disaster. The origins of Snow White, a legacy Disney shouldn't have touched. Before we dive into the controversy, let's take a step back. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is not just another Disney movie, it's the cornerstone of Disney's empire. Released in 1937, it was the first ever full-length animated feature, a groundbreaking film that turned Walt Disney Studios into an industry titan. It wasn't just about animation, it was about magic, storytelling, and capturing timeless fairy tales in a way that resonated across generations. The original Snow White was based on the Brothers Grimm tale, which dates back to the early 1800s. Yes, it was dark. Yes, it had elements that might not align with modern sensibilities. But that's what makes it a fairy tale, a product of its time, rich with history and meaning. Now, Disney's modern era has been obsessed with reboots and live-action remakes, with varying levels of success. Some, like The Jungle Book and Cinderella, were praised. Others, like The Lion King and Mulan, were met with criticism for lacking soul. But Snow White? This remake took controversy to a whole new level. Rachel Zegler's comments. The first red flag. Enter Rachel Zegler, the young actress cast as Snow White. She first gained recognition for her role in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, proving herself as a talented singer and performer. But instead of celebrating her casting, Disney found itself drowning in controversy, largely because of her own words. In interviews, Zegler made it clear that she didn't see Snow White as a beloved fairy tale. Instead, she dismissed it as an outdated relic, stating, "The original came out in 1937, and it's not like it's a story that a lot of people are obsessed with anymore." She doubled down by criticizing the original film's romance, claiming Snow White doesn't need a prince and should be a strong leader instead. She made it sound as if Disney had forced her to be part of something she didn't respect. completely alienating the fans who did love the original. And let's be real, you can modernize a fairy tale without trashing its roots. Look at Tangled. Rapunzel was reimagined as independent and clever, but the film still respected the magic of the story. Zegler, however, positioned herself against the original, which immediately turned fans off. Disney's marketing failure, how they made it worse. Disney had a chance to turn the tide. They could have used their marketing machine to steer the narrative, emphasizing the heart and magic of Snow White while reassuring skeptical audiences. Instead, their promotional campaign did the exact opposite. It amplified the backlash and made things even worse. The first red flag was the way they handled Rachel Zegler's controversial remarks. Rather than addressing fan concerns or guiding the actress to adopt a more diplomatic approach, Disney remained silent. This left her words hanging in the air, allowing critics and fans alike to latch onto them and use them as evidence of the studio's disregard for its own legacy. In the age of social media, silence is rarely a good strategy. It allows a negative narrative to grow unchecked. Then came the trailers and promotional materials, which did little to reassure audiences. Instead of evoking nostalgia or showcasing breathtaking cinematography, the footage felt hollow, uninspired, and worst of all, cheap. The Seven Dwarfs, once iconic and beloved characters, were replaced with CGI-generated or visually bizarre human-like creatures that failed to capture the charm of the original. Many fans immediately noted that they barely resembled the classic characters, and instead looked like a rushed attempt to avoid controversy surrounding the portrayal of little people in Hollywood. Disney also seemed unsure of how to position Snow White in their marketing. Were they selling a nostalgic remake for older audiences, a bold feminist reimagining for a new generation, or a generic mass-market adventure? The messaging was inconsistent, which made it hard to attract any particular audience. The film didn't appeal to nostalgic Disney fans because it strayed too far from the original, and it didn't captivate younger viewers because it lacked the visual spectacle of recent hits like Aladdin or The Little Mermaid. Even Disney's choice of words in press statements and interviews reflected their uncertainty. Instead of promoting Snow White as a timeless story with modern sensibilities, they leaned into defensive talking points about progressiveness and change, without actually explaining what made this adaptation good. This only reinforced the idea that the movie was being made for the sake of change, rather than out of genuine creative passion. Meanwhile, the online commentary sphere, from YouTube critics to film bloggers, had a field day. Every new promotional piece was scrutinized, and instead of winning over audiences, Disney's marketing campaign became an example of how not to promote a major film. The more they tried to push Snow White as a necessary evolution, the more it seemed like they were dismissing the very people who wanted to see a faithful adaptation. In the end, the marketing failure wasn't just about bad trailers or promotional stills. It was about failing to read the room. Disney underestimated how passionate audiences were about Snow White and how much they valued authenticity in adaptations. By ignoring the warning signs and doubling down on their dismissive approach, they set themselves up for one of the biggest PR disasters in modern film history. The fallout. Box office disaster and industry repercussions. By the time Snow White finally approached its release date, the damage was already done. The audience wasn't just indifferent. They were actively rooting against the film. The negativity surrounding the project had become so overwhelming that even casual moviegoers who weren't deeply invested in the controversy were hesitant to give it a chance. Initial box office tracking numbers were disastrous. Even optimistic projections placed the film well below the performance of previous Disney live-action remakes. And as the opening weekend approached, it became clear that Snow White wasn't just underperforming. It was a full-blown financial disaster. Industry analysts speculated that Disney might struggle to even break even on the film's budget, which reportedly ballooned due to reshoots and marketing expenses. But the box office numbers weren't the only concern. This film also created ripple effects throughout the industry. Rachel Zegler, once considered a rising star with promising roles in major Hollywood productions, suddenly found herself in an uncertain position. Reports surfaced that she had been quietly dropped from Blumhouse's upcoming horror trilogy, and rumors swirled that other studios were hesitant to cast her in lead roles due to the negative press surrounding her public statements. While Hollywood has a long history of forgiving actors who bounce back with a strong performance, Zegler's situation was complicated by the way she had positioned herself. If she had been able to acknowledge the controversy and soften her stance, she might have had a better chance at damage control. Instead, her unwavering comments, combined with the film's failure, made her a polarizing figure in the industry. And then there's Disney itself. The studio, which had already been struggling with a string of underwhelming releases, now faced serious questions about its approach to live-action remakes. The era of easy nostalgia-fueled hits seemed to be coming to an end. Audiences were no longer willing to accept remakes that felt more like cynical cash grabs than genuine reimaginings. Bob Iger, Disney's CEO, had successfully navigated turbulent waters before. He had overseen Disney's acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm, turning them into billion-dollar powerhouses. But this new era posed unique challenges. Streaming competition was fierce, audience expectations had shifted, and social media had made it easier than ever for backlash to spiral out of control. Even for a company as powerful as Disney, a major flop like Snow White could not be ignored. The studio now faced a difficult choice. Would they double down on their strategy and continue churning out remakes despite audience fatigue? Or would they finally take a step back and rethink their creative direction? The failure of Snow White sent a clear message. Audiences wouldn't blindly accept every modern revision, especially if they felt that the changes were driven more by corporate mandates than by a sincere love for storytelling. In the meantime, the film's failure served as a warning to other studios looking to reimagine classic stories. The backlash wasn't just about one movie. It was about an industry-wide shift in how audiences perceive remakes and modern adaptations. Disney's Snow White didn't just fail at the box office. It became a cautionary tale about what happens when a studio underestimates the importance of respecting both the source material and the audience's emotional connection to it. What this means for Disney and the future of live-action remakes. So where does Disney go from here? Well, they have a big decision to make. Do they keep pushing live-action remakes, or do they finally learn their lesson? In the past, Disney relied on nostalgia to drive ticket sales. But now, audiences are fed up with cash grabs that disrespect the source material. And Disney isn't just dealing with one bad movie. This is part of a larger pattern. Recent failures like The Marvels, Haunted Mansion, and Indiana Jones 5 have all struggled at the box office. Streaming competition is fierce. Social media backlash spreads faster than ever. Disney's reputation isn't untouchable anymore, and Snow White proved that even the Mouse House can take a serious hit. If they don't change course, their once loyal audience will continue tuning out. And for Rachel Zegler, her future depends on whether she can navigate this backlash and rebuild her image. Hollywood loves a comeback story, but only if the star is willing to listen to what the audience wants. At the end of the day, Snow White wasn't just a bad remake. It was a case study in how to completely mismanage a beloved property. From Rachel Zegler's dismissive remarks to Disney's failure to course-correct, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And now both Doe and Zegler are facing the consequences. So what do you think? Is Rachel Zegler's career over? Can Disney recover from this mess? Or is this just another chapter in their decline? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's biggest disasters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.